So to kick off, what's your journey in the technology sector? How did you get into this career?
Right, so I first discovered computing when I was in high school in the late 70s, and as part of my year 10 maths class, I think it was, we were given the opportunity to write computer programs that would run using Mark Sense cards on the Boroughs B9000 that was running at the then Canberra College of Advanced Education.
Right.
And that sounded like lots of fun to do, so tried that out, and was captivated by the idea that I could create program code that would make a computer do what I wanted it to do.
Yeah.
And then had the wonderful delight of writing a program to sum the first 100 numbers, put in a while loop that I used the incorrect inequality for.
Right.
And so it started summing at 100 and went on to infinity, and the computer operators told me at the time that they cancelled the job when I got to 500,000 lines of print.
Right.
And didn't print it.
Yeah.
And that I had an error in my code. So that got me even more interested. And went through all the usual typical things that you do when you're using Mark Sense or punch cards for computer operating.
Yeah.
Managed to drop 300 cards and have to put them all back into order.
Yeah.
All sorts of stuff that made it sound like lots of fun at the time. And I liked the precision of it. I liked the idea that there was a way of making this go correctly. And a couple of my friends who have gone to great heights in the computing industry since then, we're also picking it up at the same time, and we're a bit of a gang of lunatics who tried these things and did all sorts of interesting stuff. So that got me into it in high school. Went through secondary college, did all the computing offers that were there, and again, this same little gang of friends. We were working on different programs running on the kit computer that one of our computing teachers had used, and this was all like leading edge stuff. We were using computers that one of the terminals was a printer with a keyboard on it, so you'd literally type onto the printer, it would print out what you were typing, and then the computer would respond to you by printing onto the same bit of paper.
Yeah.
All of this was fascinating to me, and then I went into university, and my first degree was going to be a Bachelor of Arts in Computing Studies. I then changed from that to a quantity surveying degree for reasons.
All right. Yeah.
And then after that stopped, I went back to computing because that was what I wanted to do, given that I was now funding my own education again.
Yeah.
Interestingly, during the first 6 months that I was actually doing the BA in Computing Studies at the CAE, Professor Evil Vivian, who was the maths teacher at the time, said that computing is witchcraft. It's just witchcraft.
Right.
He was an old guard mathematician, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And I was sitting in his lecture hearing him say that, and I thought, well, if that's true, then programming must be casting an electric spell. And so I registered a business name, Electric Spells, and I'm still trading under that Electric Spells. And if I regretted around 2000 that I didn't make it Electronic Spells, because then I would have gone electronic commerce, electronic government. I would have predicted that by a long time, but never mind, Electric Spells it is. I told Evil Vivian that like 45 years later in a chemist at one stage, and he was very polite about it.
Right.
I'm sure not at all impressed.
Yeah.
Why would he be?
Yeah.
But so that sort of idea was also the same gang of friends who we were doing all this computing in the beginning. We were also Dungeons and Dragons role players.
Yep.
So all of that sort of mysticism and nerdism, which these days there seem to be. That's kind of that's good.
It's back again.
Back then, not so. Not so good. But yes, so we were very. That's how I got into it. That's what got me into it. And then, so when I finally qualified with my bachelor, I was actually going to qualify being between 4 and 6 years older than my fellow.
Okay. Cohort.
Cohort. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's the word I was looking for. So I thought, these guys are going to be cheaper on the market, and I want to get a job. So
Right. Yeah.
why don't I get a job before we finish, and then I can, get into it. So I applied to the Department of Immigration to be a PC help desk person,
Doing support.
doing support work.
Right.
And they had a number of junior roles on offer at the time. One of the reasons I'd chosen computing back in the day was that I've been told that there were 7 jobs for every 1 graduate in computing. Still true, I understand, but that was a good incentive to jump into it. So I reached out to the Department of Immigration before I completed my degree, and they said, well, we can offer you a role as a mainframe programmer or as a PC help support person.
Yeah.
And I said, look, I'd rather do the PC support thing, if that's all right. And they said, sure. So I joined the Department of Immigration as a ITO1, I think they called it at the time, junior IT, quite well paid, as a help desk support agent. There were 3,500 people in the Department of Immigration at the time, and they had 300 PCs.
Right.
So we could pretty much get them all in a room, and I was part of a 4-person team to support the PCs. By the time I left Department of Immigration, nearly 10 years later, I was a CITO A running the much expanded infrastructure support group, and there's still about 3,500 people in immigration, but we now had 4,000 PCs.
Right.
And distributed all over the world, and my team was involved in providing the support for that, as well as the comms communication support, the production support on the mainframes, and one other area that I can't bring to mind. Might have been security.
Yeah.
Wasn't a big thing back in 1996.
The internet changed that.
Yeah, well, actually, it might have been networking.
Yeah.
Which was different to comms, because that was telecoms.
Yeah.
So this is how I got into it, and really loved it ever since. And it was around about the time that I was leading that team that I thought I need to get connected with the IT profession and look for ways of finding out what's going on, and maybe perhaps helping out, like contributing, because it was already a good career for me. Only 9 years in. So I joined the Australian Computer Society in about 1995.
Oh, okay, right.
Sure, that's right. It might have been 93, but I think
What was the impetus to joining?
To connect with the industry and
Right.
find out more of who was doing the work in the space.
Yeah.
And arguably to be able to start to contribute. I have always had opinions about professionalism and what should be the right thing to do, in particularly with regard to IT.
Yeah.
And so I thought this is a good way of exercising those opinions.
Right.
I've been satisfied that I've been allowed to do that.
Yeah.
Some people might not have been satisfied by that.
Yeah. So how was your experience when you joined the ACS?
It was interesting because the Canberra branch was quite small, and back in the day, it was run out of a 1-person office. I think her name was Meryl Morgan, if I've remembered that correctly. Meryl, I'm sure about. Morgan, I'm less certain about. In Dixon, she was only on staff 3 days a week at most, and the BEC was a handful, maybe 6 people who earnestly, prosecuted the business of the local branch.
Yeah.
They held fairly regular branch forums, which were quite successful. I mean, they knew what they were doing, and you started to meet people and be interested in. A lot more of the communications in the branch at the time were things like emails and newsletters.
Yeah.
And much more reliance upon information age and its predecessors,
Yeah.
which were literally printed.
That's right. Yeah.
So that was good, and I joined up on a couple of SIGs that didn't have enough impetus to go very far, but that got me connected with some of the people. And I suppose, interestingly and importantly, I bumped into Tom Worthington at that time,
Right.
just about the time that he was national president. So it was interesting that, like, here you are meeting this small group of people, and one of them is running the whole thing, running the whole place,
Yeah.
on a national level. So that was an interesting introduction to the ACS.
Yeah.
But then I sort of, that fell away a bit as well because my career started to change, and I ended up being too distracted to spend more time on it. And then came back into kind of active involvement with the ACS in early 2000s, because I moved over to be an academic at ADFA.
Right.
And I had more time on my hands. And
Right.
it was also a really good opportunity then to start to draw on the insights the ACS had on what's the right way to educate people about IT, what's the right IT to educate them on.
Yeah.
And sort of draw on networks in the ACS to bring guest lecturers in and all that sort of stuff to enrich the learning experience for our students. And hopefully get the students involved in the ACS so they can start to draw on the benefits of that.
Yeah.
Slightly different, complicated arrangement at ADFA because all of the Defence Force cadets are not necessarily enamoured of the idea of joining the ACS because they don't need to get themselves a job.
Yeah,
They've got
sure.
one.
Exactly. Yeah.
But never mind.
Yeah.
Varying times we did well there.
Yeah.
And I got more involved with the ACS, joined the BEC again, and have been on the BEC, well, I was something like 15 years, and chair at one stage.
Yeah.
We did great things over that period.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed it, actually.
Yeah. So how do you see the marketplace today, and how do you see the industry developing over time?
It's interesting because one of the things that I've always struggled with as an ACS member and as a BEC member, trying to understand why more people are not joining the ACS. Too many people no longer think of IT as specially complicated or difficult.
Right.
In the general community.
Yes, I know what you mean. Yes.
Because they're using their phones, which are fantastically sophisticated computing devices, and they don't recognise the sophistication of it.
Yeah.
Periodically they might go, well, that's pretty clever, but they don't understand just how clever that is. Partly because since, I don't know, the early 2000s, people have been really working hard on making computing accessible.
And making it work.
Making it work.
Plug and play.
Just work.
Exactly, yeah.
And a lot of success in that in the industry.
Yeah.
Which is good in terms of adoption and use, not good in terms of trying to convince people what we're doing here is really sophisticated. It's not just something that anyone can do or anyone should do. So people don't see the need to adopt like a professional standard and membership of a professional association to operate in the IT industry.
Yeah.
Because they don't understand necessarily, the broad populace don't necessarily understand the sophistication of the technology and what's involved and what lies behind it. And the people who do understand that, the ones who are executing the activity, they don't see any additional benefit. You hear all these stories about people set up $1 trillion companies in their garage. Why need a computing professional? Because nobody's died yet from that. And great. But they also don't understand you have to be a registered accountant to sign off on business books.
That's right.
And people, well, yes, of course. And you go, really? Why? If that's okay, why is it that you don't expect people to sign off on a computer program, arguably that it controls people's lives in just the same way as accounting books do? And in some cases, when you're talking about embedded software in medical devices, for instance, substantially more directly impacts on their life.
Yeah.
Nobody has an answer to that.
Yeah.
I've digressed quite a lot.
No, that's all right.
What I'm seeing is that the IT, they've been saying forever, IT is becoming pervasive.
Yeah.
There's no question in my mind that IT is pervasive in our modern world.
Yeah.
The profession is still clinging to that lab coat style
Right. Yeah.
view of what their profession looks like. That's harsh, but simple. And when we're starting to, now that we've got this AI stuff where fantastically clever bits of software that nobody properly understands is generating apparently perfect responses to all sorts of things, including creating code that addresses the issues that are there that otherwise programmers would have to write.
Yeah.
We're at a cusp where people are going to completely lose connection with the importance of having somebody with experience and an ethical framework watching over even just the most important bits of what IT is delivering. Partly because I think they won't understand that it's IT anymore. They'll just lose sense of it. And then partly because they'll think, well, but computers are doing that, so why would we have somebody watch over the computers? And you go, well, if you need to be asking that question, then we can't help you anymore.
Yeah.
So where are we going? I think we'll continue. Of course, we will continue to need computer programmers and technicians, and network engineers, systems operators, the whole piece. It's a huge play in cybersecurity, which I think will eventually actually turn into just two bits of AI watching each other really carefully.
Right. Yeah.
But and then the actual AI stuff, there's still going to be a lot of computing professionals needed in that. Hopefully that common sense will show up before lots of people die from it, and we'll have these sorts of things. But I'm not sure whether one possibility is that we'll actually start to think about, right, so in fact we've got lots of computer technicians who create stuff or manage stuff or monitor stuff, and then we have computer professionals who, like architects for instance, or barristers or judges, make overarching, thoughtful considerations of the broader scheme of what's going on.
Yeah.
And they might be where the profession lands. The technicians are technicians, hopefully highly skilled, really clever at what they're doing, but not necessarily asked to think too hard about what the future impacts of or the broader impacts of what they're doing. They just have to do well what they do well. Yeah. Whereas then there'll be this hopefully a professional cohort over the top that makes decisions about, yes, we can do that, should we do that, have we done that correctly, what are the downstream impacts of doing this thing that we can well understand. I don't know, maybe we can go there. Watching the way the world's dissolving at the moment, it's very hard to be optimistic.
No, it's an interesting period that we're in right now. That, and then very much a cusp of how the society sees the tech sector, I think. So, expanding on what you were talking about before, where do you see ACS's role in that emerging landscape?
Well, I would like to see the ACS's role being, the organisation that provides it's probably no longer able to put its arms around a core body of knowledge. The IT profession globally can probably still do that, but the ACS is only part of the global profession. However, it can still be the defining organisation for what does a ethically sound, well-educated or properly educated IT professional look like, and arguably that means that the profession can be, licensing, signing off, this person meets those standards. It can also continue, in my mind, to keep saying these educational approaches will deliver appropriately qualified professionals.
Yeah.
Sure, junior, but never mind. That's what we need. The ACS should also be providing further insights, I think, to the policy setters about how we should be responding to these major IT manoeuvres, waves, and what possibilities there are for turning them to our broader societal advantage, or if not that, then at least, removing the most deleterious effects, or remediating the most deleterious effects. So the profession as a whole can certainly stand as a, it's the wrong term to use, but to be the ivory tower, which shows that there is a means of judging that this stuff is being done correctly and for everyone's benefit, in contrast to what we perhaps see at the moment.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So going back to your career, who would you describe, you mentioned Tom Worthington before, but who else would you describe as major influences in that?
Oh, well, I wouldn't want to suggest that Tom influenced me. Because he might feel badly about that. That's a good question. It's interesting because in that gang of coders that I was telling you about that I went through high school with was John DeMargariti and Stephen Wong, who created Microforte, built the original America's Cup 2 game for Electronic Arts back in the late 80s, and went on to build World of Tanks and become hugely wealthy and hugely influential in the gaming community, and set up the Academy of Interactive Entertainment here and then around the world.
Yeah.
So John and Stephen are not so much influential in the sense that I can remember sitting in an apartment with Stephen one stage in the late 80s while they were writing the EA code and say to them, "You guys are nuts." Do you understand what a risk you're taking? This is insane.
Yeah.
And nevertheless, they it's them laughing now, of course.
Yeah.
One stage, John was laughing on his hugely expensive yacht in the Mediterranean. So he's had his chance. But the importantly, so they're not necessarily influential, but they are inspirational, and it's fascinating to know that you went to school with these guys. Several of my colleagues on the BEC have, over a long time, have also been inspirational and probably influential as well, but only in that sense that they represent good role models, and so I feel, I'm sure that they have influenced the way that I approach the world, but they don't necessarily influence me to change the world, perhaps.
So, which was the school that you went to?
The Canberra High School and then Hawker College here in Canberra. So I don't know that I've had substantial influencers in my life. I'll have to dwell on that, actually. Totally made my own way. But having said that, not got far.
So, sticking with today, so you're on the BEC. What else occupies your time?
So I'm officially unretired.
Right.
I'm on the BEC at the moment, having rejoined after a brief interregnum. I am currently contracted with the ACS to do accreditations of their IT programs. I'm a case manager.
Right.
And then I sit on a couple of boards, and which are not they're IT related in the sense that on those boards I was asked to join them because of my IT experience and insights.
Right.
But the businesses are not IT. Well,
Yeah.
they're not strictly IT businesses. However, if they didn't have IT, they wouldn't be a business.
Sure.
So it's an interesting point. And then and I'm company secretary for an Indigenous reading
Right.
charity.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful little job. And otherwise I just hang around.
Right. Yeah. So, if you were talking to somebody today who's looking at a career in IT, what would your advice be?
Oh, crack on. Get into it.
Yeah.
It's hard to know. I'm not sure how you would necessarily influence them in terms of guide them in which direction to take. As an accreditation case manager, of course, I'm getting to see a lot of what students are asking for and considering about the way their initial education's going.
Yeah.
And they, like all students before them, struggle with this idea of why do I need to learn about these bits and bobs, the really simple basic stuff that frankly you need to learn.
Yeah.
I just want to write games or create AI or visualize data or do multimedia stuff, all the really sexy stuff.
Yeah.
And you go, that's fine, and we can teach you that, but by the time we finish teaching you it, it'll be out of date.
Yeah.
What you really need to learn is these things that teach you how to think, and then you spend 6 months learning it in this flavour, or another 6 months learning a different flavour.
That's right. Yeah.
It's very difficult for them to come to that understanding. So if I was guiding people, it would be pick something that you're absolutely interested in, because that's going to help you stay with it.
Sure. Yeah.
And keep working on trying to stay in front of it, or at the front edge of it.
Yeah.
Which means stay connected with the relevant information sources, build a network of people who are in the industry in your particular narrow area.
Yeah.
Certainly you should be involved in the ACS because that'll help you with the broader professional piece and workplace issues and what have you.
Yeah.
But it's about follow your passion kind of thing. And keep watching the front edge of things, because if you take your attention away from that, you'll end up stuck here doing what might be really interesting stuff right now, but in 10 years' time, if you're still doing it, it'll want to be really interesting to you. Because otherwise you're going to feel like things aren't going where they want.
Yeah. No, that's very good advice there. Well, Tim, thank you very much for your time. Unless there's something else you'd like to...
No, thanks.
But thank you very much for being so generous with your time.
No, thank you, Paul.
Thank you.